That's when Alex appeared, not as some caped savior from a rom-com, but as a shadow detaching from the downpour. A guy in a threadbare hoodie, sketchpad tucked under one arm, eyes like storm clouds lit by the flash of his phone screen. "Hey, man," Alex said, voice cutting through the torrent like a lifeline tossed into the abyss. "You look like death warmed over. Need a hand? Or at least a dry spot?" Michael lifted his head, rain blurring the world into watercolor regret, and for the first time in months, he didn't push away the stranger's outstretched palm. Michael's boots squelched against the cracked sidewalk as he followed Alex through the labyrinth of brownstones, the kind that whispered secrets of immigrant dreams and faded glory under the relentless Brooklyn drizzle. His shift had stretched into a marathon of beeps and blood, a battlefield where hope went to flatline. Tonight's casualty, a kid from the projects, eyes wide with the shock of betrayal by his own trigger-happy crew, had been the breaking point. Michael had held the compress, whispered assurances that tasted like lies, and watched the light flicker out. Now, at 4 a.m., his body was a hollowed-out vessel, propelled forward only by the gravitational pull of Alex's easy stride. They ducked into a 24-hour diner on Atlantic Avenue, the kind with Formica counters scarred by decades of spilled coffee and shattered hearts. The fluorescent buzz overhead was a poor substitute for sunlight, but it was dry, and Alex ordered 2 black coffees without asking, sliding one across the sticky table like an offering. "I'm Alex," he said, shaking water from his curls. Dark, unruly waves that framed a face all sharp angles and soft intentions. The faint scar above his left eyebrow hinting at stories he might one day spill. "Artist by day, insomniac by night. Saw you from across the street, looking like you were auditioning for a role in some gritty indie flick about burnout." Michael wrapped his hands around the mug, the heat seeping into his palms like a reluctant thaw. "Michael," he muttered, voice gravel rough from disuse. "Your nurse. Just lost someone tonight. Again." The words hung there, heavy as the humid air, but Alex didn't flinch or offer platitudes. Instead, he pulled out his sketchpad, flipping to a blank page, and began tracing idle lines with a pencil stub, curves that might have been a jawline, or the arc of a breaking wave. They talked, or rather, Michael unraveled while Alex listened with the intensity of someone sketching a soul. Turns out Alex was 30, a freelance illustrator scraping by on commissions for indie zines and the occasional mural in Bushwick warehouses. Grew up in the Rust Belt hollows of Pittsburgh, fled to New York chasing colors that didn't fade. Divorced his high school sweetheart at 22 when the truth clawed its way out. He was gay, unapologetically so, though the coming out had been more quiet resignation than fireworks. "Felt like shedding skin," Alex said, his pencil pausing. "Raw as hell, but freer on the other side." Michael nodded, the steam from his coffee curling like ghosts between them. He hadn't dated since his ex, Jordan, bailed 2 years back, said Michael's long hours were emotional quicksand, then ghosted him for a tech bro in Chelsea. Since then, hookups and dimly lit apps had been his rebellion, quick and forgettable, leaving him emptier each time. Tonight, though, Alex's gaze held no pity, just a mirror reflecting Michael's own quiet ache. "You ever feel like you're just going through the motions?" Michael asked, surprising himself. Alex's eyes met his, steady as harbor lights. "Every damn day. But then something, like finding a drowned rat in the rain, reminds you there's still fight left." By dawn, the rain had eased to a mist, and Alex walked Michael to his walk-up in Bed-Stuy, the streets awakening with the rumble of delivery trucks and the first joggers shaking off sleep. At the stoop, under the awning of Mrs. Rodriguez's bodega, Alex hesitated, then pressed a folded sketch into Michael's hand, a rough outline of his face from memory, eyes captured mid-unraveling, not broken but bending. "Don't ghost the world tomorrow," Alex said, his smile crooked, vulnerable. "Call if you need another coffee intervention." Michael watched him vanish into the gray, the sketch crinkling in his fist. For the first time since Jordan, his chest didn't feel like a locked-ear bay, sealed off, sterile, waiting for a code blue that never came. The next shift blurred into a haze of sutures and sedatives, but Michael's mind kept drifting to the diner's glow, to Alex's laugh like cracked pavement letting wildflowers through. He texted that afternoon, "Coffee round 2? Off at 7. Alex's reply buzzed back instant. "Your treat. Pick you up curbside, hero." They met at a hole-in-the-wall taqueria in Williamsburg, the air thick with cumin and the hum of Spanglish chatter. Alex arrived with paint flecks on his jeans, a fresh tattoo peeking from his sleeve. A compass rose, inked in faded blues, symbolizing paths not taken. Over tacos al pastor that burned just right, Michael spilled more. His Irish-Italian roots in Queens, the Catholic guilt that lingered like incense smoke, the way nursing had been his rebellion against his cop dad's badge and gun legacy. "Dad wanted me in blue," Michael said, chasing lime with a swig of Modelo. "I chose white coats instead. Scrubs, anyway. Saves lives without the trigger pull." Alex leaned in, elbows on the scarred wood table, his knee brushing Michael's under the pretense of space. "Sounds like armor. Mine's this." He tapped the sketchpad at his side. "Draws the mess out before it festers." Their eyes locked, and the spark was undeniable, electric, tentative, the kind that hummed like a live wire after a storm. By the third beer, Alex's hand found Michael's across the table, fingers interlacing with a gentleness that belied the calluses from charcoal and canvas. They wandered the East River waterfront after, the Manhattan skyline a jagged promise against the twilight. Alex pulled Michael close during a fairy horn's wail, their first kiss tasting of salt and spice, slow, exploratory, like mapping uncharted grief. Michael's heart stuttered, not from fear, but from the terror of feeling again. "This okay?" Alex whispered against his lips, breath warm. Michael nodded, pulling him deeper, the world narrowing to the press of bodies and the distant thrum of the city that never slept. Weeks blurred into a rhythm. Michael's graveyard shifts met with Alex's dawn patrols for coffee runs, stolen hours in Alex's loft studio overlooking the Gowanus Canal, a sunlit chaos of drop cloths and half-finished portraits. Alex painted Michael one lazy Sunday, sprawled nude on a thrift store chaise, the brushstrokes capturing not just skin but the scars. The faint line from a childhood bike wreck on his thigh, the emotional ghosts in his half-lidded gaze. "You're beautiful when you're unguarded," Alex murmured, dabbing cerulean for the veins in Michael's wrist. In return, Michael taught Alex basic CPR on the worn rug, their laughter echoing as mock compressions turned to caresses. But intimacy bred vulnerability, and Michael's walls cracked under the weight. One night, post-shift, he woke from a nightmare. Jordan's face morphing into the kid from the alley, accusatory, fading. Alex held him through the sobs, whispering, "You're not alone in this tomb." They made love then, urgent and tender, bodies entwining like roots seeking soil. Afterward, tangled in sheets that smelled of turpentine and hospital antiseptic, Michael confessed his fear. "What if I drag you down with me? This job, it hollows you out." Alex traced his collarbone, voice fierce. "Then we fill each other up. Deal?" It felt like a pact, sealed in the half-light of Brooklyn dawn. Michael started sketching too, crude lines on napkins during breaks, capturing Alex's profile mid-laugh, the way his scar crinkled. For the first time, the ER's chaos felt survivable, buoyed by texts that pinged like heartbeats. "Miss your scrubs already. Dinner?" Life wasn't fixed, but it bent toward light. Yet shadows lingered. Michael's dad, retired Detective O'Malley, showed up unannounced one crisp October afternoon, badge gleam traded for a flask's glint. "Heard you're shacking up with some artsy type," he grunted over greasy diner eggs, eyes narrowing at Michael's evasion. "Don't let it turn you soft, kid. World's full of wolves." The words landed like a gut punch, stirring old doubts. Was loving Alex a weakness, or the strength he'd been denying? Michael brushed it off, but the seed of unease took root, whispering in quiet moments. Alex, too, carried ghosts. During a gallery opening in Soho, Michael in borrowed chinos, feeling like an imposter among the glitterati. Alex vanished for a smoke, returning with hollow cheeks and a forced grin. "Old habit." He waved off Michael's concern. But later, in the cab home, Michael glimpsed a text lighting Alex's screen. "We need to talk. Soon. Alex pocketed it quick, but the damage was done. A sliver of doubt wedged in Michael's thawing heart. Fall deepened, leaves carpeting the parks in crimson regret, and their love bloomed fierce. Weekend getaways to the Catskills, where they hiked trails slick with frost, hands clasped against the chill. Midnight picnics on fire escapes, sharing stories under starless skies polluted by city glow. Michael opened up about Jordan's betrayal. Not just the leaving, but the lies. The way he'd hidden their relationship from his frat boy circle until the shame swallowed them whole. Felt like I was the dirty secret, Michael admitted, voice cracking over cheap Merlot. Alex pulled him close, fierce. You're no one's shadow. Not anymore. Not with me. In return, Alex shared fragments. The ex-wife who'd become a friend. The Pittsburgh winters that froze more than lakes. The mural he'd painted for a queer youth center. Vibrant figures breaking chains. Inspired by his own closet escape. Art's my rebellion, he said. Fingers laced with Michael's as they lay on the studio floor. Paint smeared and sated. You're the real deal. Saving lives while the rest of us just sketch him. But the text from our gnawed at Michael. A phantom itch during 12-hour shifts. He didn't pry. Trust was their fragile bridge. But it colored moments, turning Alex's late nights into suspicions. One evening, post a code that left Michael shaking. He arrived at the loft to find Alex on the phone. Voice low and urgent. Ryan, I said no. It's over, has been for years. The call ended abrupt. Alex turning with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Rough day? He asked, pulling Michael into an embrace that felt like apology. Michael nodded, burying doubts in Alex's neck, but the seeds sprouted. Ryan, whoever he was, hovered like a specter, and Michael's past amplified it. Dad's warnings, Jordan's deceptions. Love, he realized, was a double-edged scalpel, precise but prone to slipping. Thanksgiving loomed, a minefield of family facades. Michael's invite to Alex's chosen family dinner, a potluck with queer artists and activists in a Crown Heights brownstone, felt like a milestone. But en route, in the subway's rattle, Alex grew quiet, staring at his reflection in the grimy window. You sure about this? Michael asked, hand on his thigh. Alex squeezed back, but his eyes were distant. Yeah, just history catching up. The dinner was a whirlwind of warmth. Turkey carved with flair, stories swapped like heirlooms. A drag queen auntie leading toasts to found kin. Michael relaxed into it, laughing at Alex's impressions, but midway during pie, Alex's phone buzzed insistent. He stepped out and Michael, wine loose, curious, glanced when it lit up on the side table. Ryan, can't keep ignoring me. Meet at the old spot. For old times. The world tilted. Old times? Michael pocketed the doubt, but it festered through the toasts, turning sweet potato casserole to ash in his mouth. Later, walking home through crisp air laced with pretzel vendors, he confronted it gentle. Who's Ryan? Alex froze, then sighed, the words tumbling like autumn leaves. Ex, from before the divorce. We hooked up post-split. Messy, regretful. He thinks there's unfinished business. But there isn't. I swear. Michael wanted to believe, pulled Alex into a kiss under a street lamp's halo, but the fracture lines spiderwebbed. Trust, once rebuilt, cracked under the weight of unspoken histories. Winter clamped down on New York like a vice, snow blanketing the boroughs in deceptive hush, muffling the city's perpetual roar. Michael's shifts turned brutal. Flu season swelling the ER with coughing ghosts, holiday blues spiking suicides. He saved a teen from an overdose one midnight, her eyes fluttering open to his voice. Stay with me, kid. You've got stories left to tell. But each victory tasted bittersweet, shadowed by the growing rift with Alex. Their loft became a sanctuary strained. Mornings tangled in flannel sheets, Alex's sketches of Michael evolving from tender to tense. Lines sharper, shadows deeper. You're pulling away, Alex accused one snowy evening, as they shoveled the stoop, flakes catching in their lashes. Michael paused, breath fogging. Me? You're the one with ghosts texting at dinner. The words escaped unbidden, laced with hurt. Alex's face crumpled, shovel clattering. Ryan's desperate, not me. I told you it's done. But doubt is a virus and Michael's infected its spread. He dove into work, volunteering extras, numbing exhaustion with overtime. Alex countered with gestures. A custom sketch of them as superheroes. Michael in scrubs cape, Alex wielding a brush sword, framed above the bed. We're in this, he whispered during makeup sex that left bruises blooming like accusations. Yet intimacy faltered, touches hesitant, as if fearing the blade's edge. The betrayal erupted on a sleet-lashed January night. Michael's shift ended early, a rare mercy, and he detoured to the old spot Ryan's text implied. A dive bar in Red Hook, the kind with peeling paint and jukebox laments. Through fogged windows, he saw them. Alex and Ryan, heads bent close at a corner booth. Ryan's hand on Alex's arm, Alex not pulling away. Laughter, genuine, unguarded, cut Michael deeper than any scalpel. He fled before confrontation, the cold searing his lungs, betrayal a blizzard in his veins. Back at the loft, he packed a duffel, essentials only, like fleeing a sinking ship. When Alex returned, reeking of whiskey and regret, Michael was midway to the door. "Saw you," Michael said, voice steel-wrapped glass. "With him. Old times, huh?" Alex's denial crumbled fast. "It was closure. He cornered me, begged for answers. I went to end it for us." But the photos on Ryan's Insta later confirmed sporadic meetups, friendly lunches that lied with every frame. Betrayal wasn't the act, Michael realized. It was the erosion, the slow poison of half-truths. The fight raged. Accusations hurled like snowballs, Michael's grief weaponized. "You gave me strength, then yanked it like a rug," Alex wept raw. "I was scared. Scared of losing you to the job, to your doubts. Ryan was easy, safe. But you're everything." Michael left anyway, crashing at a colleague's in Park Slope. The ER his only constant. Days blurred into a numb fog. Codes called in monotone, sketches torn to confetti. Dad called once. "Told you, son. Love's a setup." But Michael hung up, the old man's cynicism a mirror he refused. Climax brewed in the ER's fluorescent glare. A call came mid-shift. Alex, in a cab, clutching his side, stabbed in Red Hook, Ryan's closure turning violent when rejection soured to rage. Michael froze at intake, gloved hands trembling as he assessed. Shallow wound, but shock setting in, Alex's eyes locking on his, pleading broken. "Mike, didn't mean," Alex gasped, before monitors wailed and the team swarmed. Hours later, in recovery, Michael sat vigil, the irony bitter. He'd saved countless, but this one gutted him. Ryan was cuffed downtown, assault charges sticking like blood on tile, but the real wound festered in trust's grave. Dawn filtered through blinds as Alex stirred, voice a whisper. "Forgive me? Or at least, hear me." Michael exhaled, the night's vigil stripping him bare. "You broke us, but seeing you like this, fighting, reminds me why I do this job. Why I loved you." They talked then, raw as open sutures. Alex owning the cowardice, the pull of familiarity over fear. Michael admitting his walls, built from Jordan's rubble, had blinded him to grace. "I can't promise perfection," Alex said, fingers brushing Michael's. "But I choose you." Every messy, numb dawn. Michael paused, the humanistic truth settling. Love wasn't erasure of scars, but weaving them into tapestry. Flawed, enduring. Spring thawed Brooklyn's bones, cherry blossoms defiant against concrete. Michael returned to the loft not as conquest but reclamation, boundaries drawn, therapy sessions shared like sketches in progress. Alex's next mural. Two figures in a storm, hands linked, emerging whole. Michael's shifts lightened. He mentored that overdosed teen, now in art class, her drawings fierce as survival. One evening, under a sky bruised purple, they walked the bridge, Brooklyn to Manhattan, the city a heartbeat below. "You found me numb," Michael said, wind whipping. "Gave me strength." Alex smiled, that crooked light. "We found each other, and that's the real save." In the end, it wasn't fairy tale polish, but the quiet humanism of two souls, scarred and steady, choosing dawn over dusk. Life's ER waited, codes and closures, but together they answered the call.